Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and today we're going to be taking a look at the awesome Sahara EK33 RGB case. Keep watching to find out more. Okay, so on today's video we're going to be taking a look at the pretty nice looking Sahara EK33 RGB case. Now actually, before we get into this too far, there are actually a couple of different SKUs of this particular case. So there is a EK33 plain, which is just the black case, no fans. There's another version, I believe, which has got some red fans, and the top of the line version, which is what we're looking at today, is the EK33 with 4 fans. That's the Pirate Ring fans, and it also comes with the Sahara SYNC RGB and fan controller. So we'll be basing all of our kind of thoughts and the looks based on that model. At the moment, retailing around about £79 on Amazon. A couple of other places doing it similar sort of prices. As is usual with Amazon and also other sellers, there will be bargains to be had. Prices will fluctuate, so definitely keep an eye on the links in the description below if you want to check it out. Now, just to actually put this into perspective price-wise, so individually these Sahara Pirate Ring fans, anywhere between sort of £5 to £10, depending when and where you buy them from. The controller by itself, normally again in the region of about £10. So if you take into account just the fans and the controller, you're looking about £40 to £50 worth of equipment straight away. So that makes this case, as stock, a value of around about £30 to £40, give or take a few pounds here or there. So for effectively what is a budget case with a lot of RGB, this seems to be really good value for money. Now there's a lot of other cases on the market around about the sort of £50 to £80 mark, which don't come with a great deal of fans, maybe 1 or 2 if you're lucky, and probably don't come with the RGB, and definitely don't come with a remote control to control it. So for me, this is actually a really, really good value for money. So anyway, let's get out of the way. So specs of this, as you can see, you've got pretty much a full mesh front, and you can see you've got 3 120mm fans visible at the front. Also on the side you've got tempered glass, which is pretty much the norm these days for PC cases, and as you can see in the rear we've also got another 120mm RGB fan. Now at the front also we've got our I/O, so we've got 2 USB 2.0, we've got earphones and microphone port. There's a power button in the middle, quite a large one, which at the moment isn't lit up. I believe when there is a PC system built in there, this will actually illuminate. I'm not sure what color, but we'll find out when we do the build, which will be coming up in a future video. So if you want to watch that, make sure you're subscribed and click on the bell notification so that you get notified when the videos are released. Next to that, we've got 2 USB 3.0s. We've got a RGB switch, then a reset switch. That for me is a little bit of a no-no, having those 2 buttons as close as they are to each other, because you might want to go and change the RGB color and accidentally press reset, which would be, yeah, not very good. Not a great idea. But anyway, at least you have got that additional RGB button on there. Not that you're going to need it, because also, as part of the RGB Pirate SYNC, you get this remote control. So this remote control can give you options to change all the colors, you can turn the whole lot off, you can change your fan speeds, all that kind of thing. Now also the beauty of this is, if you've got a motherboard which has fantastic RGB implementation, addressable RGB, or has a fantastic fan controller, then you can actually just use the onboard one. There is a pass-through, so on the actual remote control, all you do is press MB Sync, and then the motherboard will take control of your RGB illumination. So if I press it now, it should just turn off. So now that is handing control over to the motherboard. So whatever the motherboard is feeding into the 3-pin addressable RGB is what you'd see in the fans. And likewise, if you press fan auto on the remote control, the fans will now stop and they switch to PWM mode. So actually on the controller inside, there is a connector which you connect to your motherboard, so you can use your addressable RGB and your PWM signal from your motherboard. So again, complete control. You can control this however you see fit. So moving round to the specs of the system again, fans, you can get an absolute ton of fans in here, which actually is quite handy because the built-in controller, the SYNC as we discussed just now, you can actually plug in up to 10 fans on this crazy little thing. Now they do have to be Sahara compatible fans with a 6-pin connector. So there's the Pirate Ring, there's the Duo Ring, and there's the Pirate Turbo, just to name a couple. There's a few more. If you go to the site, you can check them out for yourself. So you can basically choose which fans you want, as long as they're the RGB and the 6-pin ones. You can put them in there. Now you've got places in here for up to 9 fans, which is absolutely incredible. So in the top section, we've got space for 2 120mm fans or 2 140mm fans. On the front here, we've got the same, so 3 120s, sorry, not the same as that, 3 120s or 2 140s. Also optional, you could just about squeeze in a 230 radiator on the front, 240, no problem at all. And the same for the top, 280 radiator or a 240. Obviously, if you want to put a 120 in, they will fit in pretty much any position in there. Also, on the very rear, you've got the option for a 120mm fan. Now, you can't get a 140 in there. It's a little bit too narrow for that, but you do have some movement on the fan, so you can move it up or down to suit your particular build. Now, the most interesting bit is actually on the basement at the bottom. There's actually a section where you can add an additional 3 fans, which is ridiculous if you think about it. 9 fans in a chassis, that is a whole lot of fans. I thought the one behind me was bad, but this is just taking it to another level altogether. So actually in the included accessories, there is actually some elongated screws with the kind of case fan thread on them, so you can actually put the fans in there without having to screw them from underneath, so you can screw straight down into the chassis, which I think is a really nice addition. So that's the fans out of the way. Let's take the side panel off and give you a closer look inside so you can see what is actually going on there. Okay, so this is the inside of the chassis. Now, pretty much standard affair. It's a full-size ATX. You can put the extended ATX in there, micro ATX, ATX, mini ATX, all those kinds of things. But ideally, I think with this extended ATX would be the my preferred choice, or standard ATX, just to fill up some of that room there. Also, on this section here, you've got options to mount more SSDs or 2.5-inch drives, so you can get another 1, 2 in there easily. You could possibly squeeze a third in there, so you can get at least 2 in there. There's actually room on the back as well for an additional 2 or 2 hard disk drives, so you can fill this up with quite a lot of drives. There is a lot of flexibility. I did notice actually on the back of the chassis as well, there's 2 ledges where some kind of drive holder could go. They don't include them, but again, with a little bit of ingenuity, I think you could probably mount another drive there quite easily. So inside, cable management wise, we've got cutouts. There's 2 cutouts at the top for your EPS power connectors, and this is in a really good position for fan connectors for the top of the motherboard. Also along the back edge, there's also another hole so you can run through other fans. I've actually run the Sahara fan wiring through that additional hole so as not to conflict with the APS power, all that kind of stuff. You've got grommets. Sorry, you don't have grommets. That's one thing we don't have. And actually, that is a slight disappointment, if anything, with this case, that there isn't rubberized grommets. For around about the sort of £70 to £80 mark, even though we've got this amazing RGB setup in here, it would have been really nice to see some rubberized grommets in here just to kind of really polish it, you know. But still, it's not a deal breaker. And actually, the grommets are relatively small, so I don't think it's going to look too out of place. If you've got some nice cables in there, I think it's going to look fine. Moving down, so at the bottom, there's actually 3 areas as well for cable pass-throughs, which I think is in a really nice place as well. So if you've got extra fans there, you can run the wiring straight out, so you don't have to trail it all around. I think that's a really good setup. Also, the positioning is fantastic for your HD audio, maybe a USB 2 or something. This section here would be ideal for your front panel connectors and also for the USB Type 3, all that kind of stuff. Again, I think everything's been put in really sensible places. So the cutouts actually, although they're not rubberized, they are in really good areas. So that to me is a plus. So talking about cutouts and wiring, also filtration. There's actually quite a good level of filtration. Obviously, the entire front panel is a grilled mesh, so that acts as a massive filter anyway. And actually, one thing I didn't touch on whilst we were looking at the front is one of the front panel meshes actually is removable. So you can take that out and you can actually put in there a 5¼ inch bay of some sort. So whether it's a Blu-ray drive, an optical drive, some kind of backup system, a fan controller, which probably isn't necessary because you've got that built in anyway. But you get the general idea, maybe an SD card reader, that kind of thing. Multiple card readers, you could put that in there quite easily. So if you're going to be using this for media creation, because it's nice and quiet, fans and all that kind of stuff, and lots of room for hard drive space, to put an extra card reader in there to transfer your files and footage from your cameras, maybe actually a really good idea. Going back to the filtration, so we've got mesh on the front. On the top, we've got this mesh filter again, which is magnetic, so that's nice and easy to keep clean and also to take off, all that kind of stuff. On the bottom, you've also got a very similar deal. If I can get it off, it's actually not the easiest to get off, even though it is magnetic. So you've got exactly the same as on the top, just a little bit smaller, which kind of goes the entire length of the power supply shroud. I actually find that quite difficult to get to. It's like the ones where you've got to bend it to get into place, even though it's magnetic. So even now, I'm struggling to get it on, but then I'm not looking at what I'm doing. So that, in my mind, isn't the best sort of solution. I would have much rather seen one of those plastic trays which come out and clip in. Again, not a deal breaker, and it's actually nice to see that there is actually some filtration there, but it just could have been implemented a little bit better. Talking of other things which could have been implemented a little bit better, the removable backplates for your PCI Express extensions or additions. Only the top one is kind of reusable or replaceable. Would have been nice to see at least the top two. Most graphics cards these days are dual slot devices, so it wouldn't have been a deal. It wouldn't have been like a massive expense to add two of those in, or maybe populate all of them with removable brackets rather than these kind of snap-off things, which again, I don't mind, but it would have been nicer to see at this kind of price point. So we'll take a quick look at the rear. So again, similar setup as you see on most ATX cases. You've got a little bit of extra height here at the back above from the I/O shield, so that's quite nice to give you a little bit of extra height for radiators and stuff on the inside. Also, you've got a little bit of adjustment on the fan, although I did find that having the fan on the kind of lowest setting actually worked better looks wise. It would have possibly been better to put it higher up for cooling possibly as the heat rises, but again, it's not really that important, to be honest with you. Moving down, you've got the one removable PCI bracket, as I said. I'm not entirely convinced about these kind of bits on the back. I don't like that. I prefer just to have access with a screwdriver to undo PCI expansion ports, that kind of stuff. But this works. It looks quite sturdy and it holds itself in place. Again, not a deal breaker in any way, shape or form. At the bottom, we've got a power supply area. Again, what I said, it's all filtered, and also you do get quite a lot of air going into the power supply area, the basement area, from the front fan, because the very bottom fan actually blows air kind of 33% to 67%. 67% of it is actually going in the basement. So if you've got drives in there, also if your power supply has any kind of intake there as well, you can get fresh air into there. If for any reason you haven't got a power supply which takes fresh air from the kind of surrounding areas, which I guess not many of them do these days, it's actually quite good, because the air that comes in, you can feel it coming through and back up through the mesh. So that's going to give you a little bit of extra cooling performance for your graphics cards. So again, just a nice thing. The ventilation here is really good. Moving down to the feet. Now on this one, I found it actually is a little bit wobbly. It's not too bad actually in this angle, but I did find earlier there's a little bit of a wobble to the chassis. I think it's probably because these feet which have been added on, which are kind of very much like the, is it the G5 or G6 Max, the Power Max, that kind of thing. So it's raised it up a bit as well. So there's lots of airflow underneath to get air into your power supply. And actually you can feel quite a breeze all the way along there where it's pulling air through. So that's really good for keeping power supplies cool. But yeah, the legs, even though they're steel, mild steel I would guess, maybe mine aren't quite flat or not quite screwed in, so there's a very slight wobble there. Anyway, that's enough of that. Let's look at the backside. Okay, so while we got the back off, I thought I'd lean it over and get the filter back on. So as you can see, there is actually room there so you can just clip it off and clip it back on, but I think actually with it being magnetic, it actually doesn't help matters a lot. But no, went on okay there. Maybe if you're looking at it, it's a lot easier than what it is if you're trying to film it. Who knows? Anyway, so that's your filtration on the bottom, and it goes actually quite a long way along there. So if you've got a larger power supply, brilliant. It's going to keep things nice and clean inside. Actually, talking about the rear panel, as I said we're going to remove it. This back panel actually, for some reason, has got quite a lot of flex in it. So I'm not overly keen on that. And I think actually it's because of this cutout at the top. It seems to have weakened it slightly, but again, it doesn't seem to resonate or anything with the fan noise or anything, but maybe when we've got a build in there it might do, so we'll keep an eye on that. Which actually leads me on to a weird thing. I'm not sure what this is all about. These cutouts at the top. Now it's a good idea because the heat is going to kind of rise, and that is because the case is positively pressured fan-wise. It's going to blow hot air, and hot air rises, so you're likely to use this as extra ventilation. Now because of where this is, so this is obviously where those vents are going to be at the top, so you've got all your hot areas here, so you've got your graphics card, you've got the back of your CPU, you're going to have your VRMs here, so this is going to keep this area nice and cool, and hopefully the heat that's built up at the back is just going to come out the top and through there. That is anything that's not exhausted out the rear fan. So yeah, kind of weird design choice, but I can kind of see why it might work. So let's look at the back of the case. As you see, this wire here is hanging down. That is going to be where the fan wire is going to go through. As standard, when you get this case, you'll probably find that the fans may not be installed and the fan controller may not be installed. So for me, it was a DIY thing to do. Again, you may find yours is completely installed. I don't know. This is a very new case, so things could change. So I found, for me personally, the easiest way to wire this was to put the fan controller there. It's on a self-adhesive sticky pad, so you can just stick it there. You could have stick it there, wherever. Again, it's your PC, it's your DIY, do it however you see fit. I just found that the wires were nice and easy to kind of fold up and down into this front channel, which runs along here. And the top one, I'll tidy that up a little bit later, but it keeps it all nice and clean, and I think actually it looks like quite a clean setup already with the wiring that's been done already. You do find some of these cases, even though they've got fan controllers on, you've got like a fan controller somewhere and you've got an RGB controller somewhere, and there's just wires crisscrossing everywhere, which is a real pain. But this, I think, actually looks pretty clean already. So going back to the actual controller, so the controller itself, although you've got the remote control and you've got the pass-through, so you can control it from your motherboard, you've also got manual control with these buttons. So there's a couple of buttons on there, so you can change fan speed, the mode, all that kind of stuff. So you're very unlikely to ever want to use those buttons, but they are there as an option. There's also a connection on there, so you can wire it up to the RGB switch, which is at the top. Again, I haven't done that yet, so whether I will or not, I don't know. I might leave that disconnected. It seems quite happy to do it through the remote control. So grommets, again, got lots of pass-throughs, so if you are putting SSDs on the inside, nice and easy to put wires through. Again, these cutouts here for your EPS cable and for your fan cables, all that kind of stuff for the CPU fan, really nice and easy to get to. There's a lot of depth here as well for running cables through, so there's about 3/4 of an inch there, I would say, gap-wise to route your cables, so it's going to be no problem at all. I've got a really cheap, nasty power supply in here just to get these fans up and running, so you could see what it was like. But again, there's plenty of room there for putting cables. If you're using a modular power supply, fantastic, no problems at all. When I do the building this, actually, I am going to deliberately use a semi-modular power supply with as much connected as possible, and I'm going to try and use some cable extensions as well, which are coloured cable extensions. I'm going to go for a black and white themed build just to see how that goes, and try and fill it up with cables and see how manageable it is. So let's take a look at some of the other features here. So at the bottom, you've got the drive rack or drive bays. So these are removable sleds, and you also get your accessories kit. Actually, in the accessories kit, as I discussed earlier, there's 12 of those longer screws for attaching the fans to the basement if you so wish. Nice touch as well, there's also a microfiber type cloth in there to keep the glass clean, and cable ties and all that kind of stuff. It's nice to see those kinds of things being included. Moving back to these drive sleds. So the drive sleds are actually pretty strong, pretty decent plastic, durable. On the sides, there's actually some really thick rubber grommets that go around the outside of it, so to reduce any vibration. So if you've got a drive in there and it's a mechanical drive, then those rubbers are going to hopefully absorb a lot of that resonance. Same goes for the one below. So you've got 2 drive bays for your mechanical or SSDs. Again, you choose whatever you want to put in there. Nice and easy. Unfortunately, the way I've wired it makes it so they're not particularly easy to get to, so that's something we can definitely look at. This cable here, I thought I'd leave this out actually to show you. So this cable is from the controller, runs down through, and this is what you plug into your motherboard as a pass-through. So you've got your 3-pin 5-volt addressable RGB, and also you've got your 4-pin PWM connector. So if you do want to have a pass-through and you want to let your motherboard take control of your fans on your RGB, maybe you've got a slightly cheaper board and you've only got 1 PWM controller, or 2, like 1 for the CPU, 1 chassis fan header, you can plug this in and you can control up to 9 fans in this case with that one connector, which again is brilliant. If you're using an older system, maybe you've got like an older i5 or something, you're trying to do a flip, put it into a case like this, it will look the dogs, it really will. and also you don't need to have built-in RGB because you've got the controller there. But then if you decide, or if the owner decides they want to upgrade and put something newer and modern in, then they can go ahead and do that and still use all this kit with modern boards, with 5-volt addressable RGB, with lots of fan headers. It's a really, really flexible chassis. And it's actually, although it's quite tall, it's not very long, so it will fit into most spaces. I'm actually, yeah, I'm quite pleased with this. I think it's a nice case. I'm not sure if it's quite up to the level of the Charcoon case I've got in the background, but that is £70–80 on its own without any RGB. So if you take into account there's probably a good £50–60 worth of RGB on top of that in there, essentially that is kind of twice the price of what this costs off the shelf. So if you take that into comparison, this actually does stand out as being fantastic value for money. So there you go. Anyway, that is my unboxing and quick sort of overlook at the EK33 case. Let me know what you think of it in the comments. But in the meantime, I've been Mike. This is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.